Let's get rid of the rumen bit
Yeah.
because it sounds like a cow's stomach.
Yeah.
Maintain the Asian
Yeah.
and then add to that immunize. So immunization, because that's what everyone wants us to do. So if you haven't already done so, go and get the jab, as it's called in the vulgar parlance, because it's very important, because if you don't get the jab, there'll be another lockdown and then we can't do the show.
It's been a while. How long has it been now? 4 weeks? 5?
Well, there was an intervening lockdown, but even before we get there,
Yeah.
just an issue with the name of the show.
Oh.
Because,
This again.
no, we need to get this right, Pete. You know, a name is very important. Look at you, your parents named you Panayotis,
They did.
the All-Holy.
Yeah.
So that semantic meaning you carry with you to your grave and beyond. My parents named me Konstantinos, which means constant, as in constant annoyance, constant itch, constant irritation, and therefore I internalize those attributes. The name of this show is incorrect because it gives the wrong message.
Right.
Ditch romaic, because no one knows what that means.
No.
It sounds like mosaic and it isn't. And I'm thinking rumination.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get rid of the rumen bit,
Yeah.
because it sounds like a cow's stomach.
Yeah.
Maintain the Asian
Yeah.
and then add to that immunize. So immunization, because that's what everyone wants us to do. So if you haven't already done so, go and get the jab, as it's called in the vulgar parlance, because it's very important, because if you don't get the jab, there'll be another lockdown and then we can't do this show.
For 1 second,
Yeah.
I thought you were going to actually suggest another prefix to Asian.
Oh, no, I'm done with prefixes. Prefixes are so pre-lockdown. Post-lockdown, it's suffixes or immunizations.
I thought it was going to be a word beginning with M, but
I am
nevertheless,
sorry to disappoint you.
I thought that's where you were going to go with it. All right. so-
Malefication, I think, was the one you were thinking of.
yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
That's the word. All right. So a few things have been happening, and what I wanted to do this time is I just wanted to get into a couple of interesting topics that have come up during these 4 or 5 weeks, and get your thoughts on it. One thought I thought we'll start off with is a quote.
A quote. Quote's good.
So I came across this quote. In fact, you posted this quote recently, and it was from James Madison,
Okay.
4th US president.
Grandfather of Ashley Madison of internet fame.
Oh, yes, of course.
I know nothing about that.
yes.
Asking for a friend.
So he basically
But
said
seriously, you should really try dating a bot. It is really quite breathtaking.
you from what you've heard from friends.
Yeah.
Yeah. He said this once: had every Athenian citizen been a Socrates, every Athenian assembly still would have been a mob.
Okay. First of all, in this room, we don't say Socrates, we say Socrates, like in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. It's Socrates, dudes. Yeah, Left it on. Let's get a bit of perspective. James
Yes.
Madison, President of the United States,
One of the founding father?
founding father of the nation.
Right.
James Madison, where do you get off? Where do you get off, man? Seriously. Okay, so the whole idea is that they're trying to determine what kind of polity this will be. They're removing the shackles of British colonialism, and every time I talk to Americans, which is not often because I find them obtuse and annoying, they tell me, you're labouring under the slavery of the Queen, and, I kind of like the kind of, if this is slavery, bring it on, rather than the dysfunctionality of the modern American polity or the bits that you get to see on the TV. They're trying to figure out what kind of state. They don't want despotism. They want to have a democracy of sorts where well-to-do people get to vote and determine what to do in their own country. And then there's a choice. Do we go the Greek way, the Athenian way, because there were very other different versions of democracy.
Yeah.
There's not just Athenian democracy. There was Samian democracy. There were democracies on other islands. There were democracies in colonies along the coast of Asia Minor. And they all had different rules. Some allowed greater franchise, others allowed less.
Yeah.
There was an interplay between the two. But Athenian democracy is the one that everyone knows about. It gets the better press. It's the one that's more widely written about by ancient authors. So that's why it was celebrated. So do we go down that path, says James Madison, the Anglo-Saxon?
Right.
Or do we go down the path that eventually America went down, which is the Roman model? And America is, as a country, is modeled on ancient Rome. That's why you have the Capitol, which was also in Rome. You have in their Senate building, you have the fasces, the bundle of sticks. The idea was that one stick can be broken easily. Lots of sticks bunched together cannot be broken. You know, all for one and one for all. With the axe, which was the symbol of ancient Rome, and then was appropriated by Mussolini as part of the fascist regime.
Right. Interesting. Didn't
You
know
know
that.
the way that symbols are used and misused, kind of like us with the phoenix. The first Greek currency was the phoenix. Yet the phoenix now has connotations for us in Greece of the dictatorship. And it has not been used since, even though this was a symbol that symbolized the regenesis of the nation, because all it takes is one moron to misuse a symbol and then it's tainted for life. Yeah, That's what's happened here.
That's actually very interesting.
So-
very interesting. I had no idea that the phoenix is.
The first unit of currency was the phoenix.
Right.
Not the Order of the Phoenix, although interestingly enough, Pete, for Harry Potter fans out there, my daughter's just become one.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
She's enjoying the books.
Yeah, she is. I first read the Harry Potter books in ancient Greek.
No.
Yes.
You're going to tell me they've got ancient Greek versions?
Arios Potter. And the Philosopher's Stone, και ή του φιλοσόφου λίθος, in ancient Greek.
You're
Yeah.
serious.
I was looking for a Greek version for my sister back in the day, and I found that and I read that. So, but in terms of that, why are we talking about Harry Potter? Oh, the Order of the Phoenix. Well, one of the highest medals that the modern Greek Republic can bestow on someone is the Order of the Phoenix. So JK, you got that from us. You need to pay royalties. You have substantial royalties from the whole franchise. Give us our due. You have taken the Order of the Phoenix from us. Give it back.
Having said that, so now it looks as if the whole coronavirus medical community owes more royalties to the Greek nation as well, after renaming the different strains after the Greek letters of the alphabet.
This is my problem. Okay, with this appropriation rubbish. Do we as Greeks appropriate anything? No.
We don't?
No, what do we appropriate? We appropriate nothing. And yet everybody just takes without asking. Now who are you, World Health Organization, to name the variant strains after the Greek alphabet? First of all, what happens after you get to Omega? What are you going to do? Why not a country or a people or a language that no longer is existent, like Sumerian, which has logographs, or ancient Egyptian, and you can use the hieroglyphs, and that way no one gets offended. I'm offended. What, are you trying to say that my language, my letters are diseaseful? That they are contagious, and that's why we're going to... No. Get an alphabet which is non-offensive, belongs to people that no longer exist, or to people that are vying for attention. For example, the modern-day descendants of the ancient Egyptians are the Copts. They'd be happy if you use the Coptic alphabet, which is based on Greek anyway, because it gives them attention. No one knows who they are. Use one of those and be happy. Why don't you use the alphabet of the Ubykh people in Georgia with 46 consonants?
I suppose it's got to do with the fact that the Greek language is synonymous with all things scientific.
No. Well, guess what? Now it's synonymous with disease. Bloody wogs.
We've somewhat deviated, right?
James Madison,
Yes.
grandfather of Ashley Madison.
Yes.
So he decides that, well, you know what? We don't want to go down the Athenian model, because if all these Socratic type people are sitting there ruminating, we've heard that word before, over the events and the why and the wherefore and everything else, and everyone's got a different opinion, nothing will get done. So the Roman model, where you have senators who are basically a class above the people, who determine things between themselves for the good of all, is the better model. That's the model they went for. They did not want a democracy.
Right.
What they wanted is for the elites. I mean, there's social mobility. You can become an elite if you're smart enough, clever enough, make enough money. But it is your elites who should be governing the state. And I mean, you look at the state of American politics, all the presidents, modern day presidents, are very rich people. You know, they get to a stage where they're making millions and then they become presidents.
Right.
Your average governors and people in those positions are also self-made, very wealthy people. And it's a government of the wealthy for everyone else.
Plutocracy of sorts.
All it is. It is. And that's based on the Roman model. So that is why America is the way it is. And that's why James, father of Ashley, decided that it should go down that path. And I mean, it is amazing just how closely the trajectory of modern America follows that of ancient Rome. You know, you have the Republican period, the isolationist period, with people like Cato saying, you know, don't mix with anybody else, it's just us for us.
Yeah.
And then you have the period of conquest, you have the period of imperialism, and then you have the period of the mad emperors, Pete. Obama, for example.
Very mad. He wasn't exactly very rich before he became president.
No, but that's the point. You allow social mobility.
Yeah.
And he was a very distinguished lawyer.
Yeah.
He was a governor. He's in the position to make a lot of money.
And he was never a governor.
Wasn't he?
No, he was a
not?
senator.
That's right. Yeah,
Yes.
sorry.
Yeah,
Sorry.
he was one of the few presidents who were senators.
I was thinking of Arnold Schwarzenegger, who should have become. You know, there's that law that if you're not born in America,
you can't become
you
president.
can't become president.
Yeah, that's
no,
right.
no,
Yeah.
Arnie can't become president. Seriously, no.
Yeah, it's a
Racism.
missed opportunity for the Americans. So the quote had every Athenian citizen been a Socrates, every Athenian assembly still would have been a mob. It's pretty much saying that even if every single American, always trying to say, even if every single American was as smart or as gifted or as articulate as Socrates was, you still wouldn't want that system of government.
Well, there's also the flip side of it. You could have so many Socrates, but what happened to Socrates in the end? Socrates was forced to take the hemlock,
Yeah.
which means the people did not appreciate him.
Yes.
He was considered a threat to the established order.
Yeah.
You look at it on both sides of the coin.
Right.
People don't appreciate a Socrates. Socrates asks uncomfortable questions and forces you to really look at things the way they really are, and to really penetrate the core of reality. And that, unfortunately, sometimes is very difficult to contemplate. Because our society, our social constructs are all based on certain guiding myths and illusions that make us assist us to sleep well at night. Socrates strips that bare. And then there's none of that romance anymore. You're looking at the bare bones and skeleton of this construct, and sometimes what you see is not very nice.
So pragmatic or just pessimistic?
All of the above and more.
There you go. So all this talk about democracy, Athens being the birthplace of it and what have you, and us looking to that as an ideal, all based on a lie.
No, it's not based on a lie. Athens is not the birthplace of democracy. Democracies emerged in various parts of the Greek world. As I said, that is the most famous example. And then Athens was one of those interesting countries that tried to export their democracy and force other nations to have a democracy. And you have that interesting thing. It's almost like the Cold War between the Soviet Union and America, where Athens is forcing its political system onto colonies or other states in the Delian League, which was formed after the Persians. And then Sparta is trying to force an aristocratic constitution on the ones that they're vying for. And when Sparta conquers Athenian colonies or Athenian allies, it forces them to adopt an oligarchic constitution.
Right.
So you have already this battle of ideologies.
How long did that last for, though? With the Spartans?
That was the Peloponnesian War, and they were going back and forth. And the Peloponnesian War is a brilliant way to show... I mean, I have this theory that the brilliance of the Greek people is the fact that they exist even though they're so stupid and in spite of their ridiculousnesses. And I will back this up with evidence because I never just make blanket statements without reason. Although I do. Ashley Madison, you owe me money. But... you have the Persian Wars, and then the guiding myth is Athenians and Spartans and that weird guy with the earring. They fought that weird guy from the earring, with the earring, who was trying to, he was a weird-looking guy with all the piercings.
He was. They really dressed him up well, didn't they?
The king of Persia, they fought the Persians and they defeated the Persians. This had never been done before, and it was because they were united, even though that's not true. The Macedonians and the Thessalians rolled over. They were on the Persian side,
In fact, I think
It's an inconvenient truth.
90% of the Greek city-states rolled over, right?
They all rolled over, except for the ones down the south that are recalcitrant, but all Southerners are. And God bless them, because otherwise we wouldn't be here. So they do this, and then there's the Peloponnesian War, and they're fighting over the spoils. And then Sparta goes to Persia and says, well, to the Persian king, we've just fought a massive war to get rid of the Persians. Says, well, you're the empire. You're the umpire. You are going to determine who's right, who's wrong, and you're going to adjudicate between the states.
Yeah.
So the Greek city-states are acknowledging that the Persian king is the umpire.
Yeah.
Seriously. Yeah? And Sparta is quite happy to hand colonies back on the Asia Minor coast back to Persia in order for that to happen.
Yeah.
And then you have people like Themistocles, the great naval leader, the victor of Salamis, or salami, depending on... I love salami. You know, salami was actually invented by the Greeks. This is true. And it was very popular in Lucania, which was in... No. Lucania...
Please let this be true.
This is true.
Okay.
Lucania, in the modern Italian pronunciation, is a region in southern Italy. As we know, there were Greek colonies in southern Italy.
Yeah.
And the sausage was very common and popular there, hence Lucanico comes from Lucania. No. Everything you hear on this show is genuine, Pete.
It's the same area that in Latin was known as Lucian or Lucia.
No, that's something else.
That's
this
something
is
else.
Lucania.
Yeah, because we had another conversation
That's
recently.
right. Yep.
Well,
So,
I won't get into that.
So, the what were we talking about?
Yeah, we're talking about umpiring. Persians being umpiring the.
And how did the sausages get involved in that?
Well, we talked about the Greeks, Salamis, Battle of Salamis.
Battle of Salamis. See, there's a train. It's a thought train. It boards at the station, but then it misses the next stop. Thank you, Melbourne Metro. No. He ends up being, the victor of Salamis, ends up being the satrap of Magnesia in Asia Minor for the Persians. That's how it works. Yeah.
Themistocles. It was a satrap.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Hang on.
I see you look mystified.
Yeah, I do, because...
And I say unto myself, why are you mystified?
Because a satrap a satrap to me...
I love the word satrap. I like to have the words Kostas Kalinios satrap at the end of my name.
But so even though they won, the Persians made him a satrap and considered him to be a satrap? Because
then there's a Peloponnesian War, then he falls out with his own people, then he goes over to the Persians and offers his services, and they say, you're great. I mean, you beat us, your qualities are immense. We need people like you. And he becomes a satrap. And interestingly enough, in ancient times, the only people to erect, Ashley Madison, take note, a statue of Themistocles were the Persians in Magnesia. Yeah. Now, fast forward to 1821.
Yeah.
Greek revolutionaries have just kicked the Turks out of Moria and a lot of Sterea Elada, except for Patra. They didn't get Patra until the end.
Okay.
And then what do? They start fighting amongst each other.
Yeah, 1822.
Who's going to control this? Who's
Yeah.
going to control that? Who's going to control this? And then what happens? Ibrahim comes from Egypt, takes over Moria, and then you need a intervention.
1826.
You need an intervention from the outside in order to free these places. And Greece is no longer free because Greece is now a country which is controlled by world powers.
Yeah.
To whom Greece owes its freedom. How's that different? Let's go to 1940. 1940, we valiantly fight the Italians and chase them out of Albania, and we reconquer northern Epirus, and it's the Toepos to Saranda. It's a miracle.
Yeah.
And then the Germans come and occupy us under their brutal jackboot and create terrible atrocities for which they have not been punished and should be punished. Yeah.
Agreed.
And then what do? We start fighting amongst each other.
Yes. We do.
And we are fighting for what? One group is fighting so that the Russians can come, and the other group is fighting so that the British can control us.
Yeah.
How is that different? So it is remarkable that we're still around as a people, even though we're so inept.
Wow.
I think that was the original contention.
That was
if
the original
we rewind
contention.
this,
Yes.
if this were a tape and we could rewind it,
you
and
found
it is
a way
not
of bringing
tape.
it back. You found a way of bringing it
I
back.
discovered to my shock the other day, mes enfants, that actually tapes don't exist anymore. And we cannot rewind. The past flows. in its own direction, and we go towards the future. So what's next?
Well, yes, and tapes are a different topic altogether. We have to discuss that one day too. Okay. Well, another topic I wanted to bring up was we had more than once we had mentioned outside of this forum elements of Greek culture that are within other literature. In this case here, I think we were talking about Shakespeare.
Shakespeare.
And there's a lot, right?
Shakespeare was Greek, you know this.
Okay. And pray tell me, how do you know that?
Shakespeare was Greek because there are so many Greek motifs in his work. How could he not be Greek? Από πού τα πήρε δηλαδή? Αυτός έπρεπε να ήταν Πελοποννήσιος, να το μάθε στο σχολείο, να πήγε στην Αγγλία και μετά να έγραψε αυτά που έγραψε γιατί είναι όλα ελληνικά.
Well, he does have a fair few, right? And
well, Timon of Athens, Pericles, Greek, Midsummer's Night Dream, characters like Demetrius, they're all Greeks. Why are they all Greeks? They are all Greeks because it's the Renaissance. These people are discovering these texts. They're in fashion. They're a mark of an educated person. And remember, Shakespeare's middle class.
Yes.
And when you're middle class and you're looking for royal preferment, you've got to talk their language.
Yeah.
You've got to espouse their intellectual interests. And he did that by pushing that classical. I mean, the work is ahistorical. The Pericles that you read about is not the Pericles of ancient Athens. But he'll use a name, he'll use a motif, he'll play around with it, and he'll develop a trajectory of his own. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I think we discovered, we were discussing this because we had nothing to do in the context of Pondos.
Well, yeah, you mentioned you found a reference to Pondos.
Pondos is a place that everyone associates with people dancing the kotsari and the tick and the nervous tick. Yeah.
I remember this reference, yeah.
The nervous tick. And that's about it. And yet Pondos features in literature everywhere.
Yeah.
From Jules Verne, and I was reading a book recently called Keraban the Inflexible. Keraban the Inflexible is a great book. It's one of Jules Verne's least known books. Jules Verne, Around the World in 80 Days, Journey to the Center of the Earth with Brendan Fraser. Really bad. Don't watch it if you haven't. You will never get those hours of your life back.
Wow.
But read the book. Book's good. These kind of thing. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Brilliant. That one read.
Not watch.
Captain Nemo. Well, Finding Nemo is better than Captain Nemo, but anyway. Keraban the Inflexible is this idea that there's this Turkish guy who's set in his ways, and he lives in Constantinople, and as you know, there's the European side, and then there's the Asiatic side. So the Sultan, according to this book, has imposed a tax for people wanting to cross with their ferries or their boats from the European side to the Asiatic side. And Keraban the Inflexible wants to cross over, and he says, what do you mean I have to pay a fee? And that's kind of like CityLink, if you're here in Melbourne, which most of you are not. And he says, you know what, bugger that. I am going to travel all around the expanse of the Black Sea until I get to the other side. And that way I can avoid this fine, which in today's currency would be about $5. And he does that. And in the meantime, Jules Verne, he must have done a lot of research because he wrote this in the late 1800s, describes Greeks living along the Black Sea, describes their culture, describes their clothing. You get there's this beautiful description of the Zipka and the Pondian kukula and all that. He talks about the language. It's amazing. And considering that all those Greeks are no longer there because of the genocide, because of the Bolshevik Revolution and all these things, it's a great historical resource, even though it's literature, to see how these people were imagined in the eyes of Westerners. Yeah. So that's just one example of a literary reference. And the other is in Shakespeare, and in particular in Othello.
Othello, that's right.
Now, Othello is interesting because a lot of scholars discuss whether it's a racist work. Other people talk about the redemption of it because the Moor is forced to kill.
So it's some context for those who don't know Othello too well.
Okay, if you don't know Othello, it's a game. One side of the disc is white, the other one is black, and then you've got to flip them over. It's all about flipping.
Othello's he's the protagonist, and
there used to be a confection called Othello. It was a kind of biscuit or something, wasn't it, back in the day, or chocolate?
I don't know. You're not confusing that with Oreos, are you?
Oh, I don't eat Oreos because they're American, and I hate James Madison and Ashley Madison.
I don't know. You could be right. I've never heard of an Othello confectionery, but Othello, the character, Shakespeare, he's a protagonist, and he's a Moor.
And he's in Cyprus. Why is he in Cyprus? Because Cyprus at that stage is held by the Venetians. Yeah. So he's a Moor in the service of Venice, and he falls in love with, I think it's Desdemona, and then Iago, the evil Iago, decides to create jealousy in the because they're a happy couple. They don't shut up anyone on the internet because the internet hasn't been invented. He's not receiving saucy texts from people.
No.
She's not flicking through, what's that app called? The one that I don't have, Tinder. Yeah.
Yeah, Tinder.
She's not swiping left or right.
No.
None of that's happening. They love each other. And then Iago, this evil guy, goes in the middle and tries to convince Othello that his wife is cheating on him.
Oh.
And he kills his wife. Spoiler alert, bad luck. And
400 years too late.
okay, so there's a discussion about rage, and Othello gives this great speech where he, if you like, parallels rage to the stormy Black Sea, because as we know, the Black Sea is called Evxinos Pontos,
Yeah.
the sea which is friendly to strangers. But that's because it used to be called Axenos Pontos,
Yes, that's right.
the unfriendly sea,
Yeah.
the sea that doesn't want strangers because it is a treacherous sea.
Yeah, it is.
And that is just a way of trying to calm the sea down, give
Yeah.
it a good name so that it will, do what it's told. So I'm going to, because I don't know this speech off by heart, I'm going to read this speech. And Othello says, "Never, Iago, like to the Pontic Sea, whose icy current and compulsive course never feels retiring ebb, but keeps on due to the pro-Pontic." See, there was pro-Pontic and anti-Pontic. This is the pro-Pontic comma. Yeah, they love Pondians, but I Propondida is the sea of Constantinople before you actually get into the Black Sea. Yeah. So to the pro-Pontic and the Hellespont, another pont. Even so, my bloody thoughts with violent pace shall never look back, never ebb to humble love, till that a capable and wide revenge swallow them up. So the Black Sea, a sea of revenge, a sea of evil, a turbulent sea, a sea of tormented emotions. Whoa.
Wow.
Yeah.
The Black Sea itself has got that reputation. I read how, because of the after you achieve a certain depth, many elements of the Black Sea actually lack oxygen. So it's actually considered to be one of the world's greatest nautical museums.
That's true.
Yeah,
That is absolutely
so
true.
There was so much so there was a diving crew that went down and you could still see ancient shipwrecks there.
Yeah, perfectly preserved.
Perfectly preserved, so much so you can actually still see the etches of the chisel that in the wood grain.
Yeah, yeah.
And how the reason why the coasts of the Black Sea were so populous was because ships rarely ever crossed it; they always went around.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because as soon as you crossed it became far more treacherous the further to the center of the
It's
sea.
a very, very stormy sea.
Yeah.
Obviously now with submarines and with
Well,
Russians
yeah.
and Crimeans and all these
Then it's
other
all
people
ni-
doing
it's all
interesting
good,
things,
nice and safe now.
it's very different. Yeah.
Now it's very excellent.
Friendly Russians, friendly Ukrainians, and friendly Turks,
All getting along.
all waving to each other across the shores.
Hugging each other. Yeah. So they've really brought the Evxinos in there for the word Evxinos, haven't they?
Or the word Ksin.
Right. So that was one of you. You know what? I really do want to visit Shakespearean Greek references again. I think that it'd be good to sort of showcase many different elements of it, because Shakespeare, to this day, 400 odd years later, still considered to be one of the greatest writers of all time, and still referenced. His plays are still showcased, and yet the level of understanding as to and the influences, the Greek influences within those plays, are hardly discussed amongst the greater population.
Did Shakespeare know Greek? That is a topic that many academics are on the fence about.
Really?
Just like, did Dante know Greek? Which people say they don't. He didn't. But did Shakespeare know Greek? Did he have some rudimentary Greek? What kind of Greek? It is an interesting. It is an interesting topic to discuss, and we should do that sometime.
We should
talk about Shakespeare and all those influences, because of course, the first person to translate Shakespearean plays into modern Albanian or any Albanian was a Greek, Stylianos Mavromatis. who became the first president of modern Albania under the name Fanoli. He was a priest, became a bishop in America, and he was the leading light of the Albanian Renaissance
was
and
this?
national movement. This was in the early 1900s.
Wow.
Yeah,
When did Albania become a country?
early 1900s.
Well, that's hence the reason why he's the first president.
Yeah.
What was it a part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire before then? Or?
No, it was part of the Ottomans.
Oh, it was an Ottoman
And had a very
province.
privileged place under the Ottomans because they were Muslims.
Yeah.
So they were basically doing what the Kurds did in eastern Anatolia, which is they policed the area for
the Ottoman.
the Ottomans, which is why you get so many of them and connecting and interrelating with the Greeks.
Right. Okay.
Because we remember that a lot of the Armatoli who fought in the Greek Revolution were actually trained in the court of Ali Pasha in Yanina, who was the chief of these people,
Wow.
including most of the Greek heroes of Sterea Elada.
And when we talk about people talking Alvanitica,
Yeah.
Is that Albanian?
Oh, it's a form of Albanian. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
It's a form of Albanian spoken in Greece.
And it was actually pretty widespread from what I've been told for a
Still
while.
is. There's a lot of older
Really?
people in villages, especially in the south, in Corinthos, in Thiva, who speak the language.
It threw me off. I just couldn't understand how people would, in Peloponnese would be speaking Alvanitica. Like I never made that connection at all.
It's kind of how we across the side of the globe here in Australia, assuming that we are there,
Assuming that Australia is a country.
are speaking English. How does that? Or Greek. How do people speak Greek in Australia? Because they got there. It's not very hard. Interestingly enough, in the 1920s, when the Asia Minor refugees settled in Athens and they went to places like Menidi and these areas, and they settled there, all the people in those villages, because all villages then, they weren't suburbs of Athens, were speaking Arvanitica.
Wow.
And these people were amazed at that. They were saying, we were in Asia Minor and all our villages were speaking Greek.
Yeah.
And we've come to Greece, in inverted commas, and everyone here is speaking Arvanitica.
Wow.
So it just shows you how demographic realities and linguistic realities never marry up.
No.
It's always complicated.
I want to visit later on, talking a little bit about culture and identity and heritage and so forth. A little bit later on, I think it's a topic I've got further down. I want to change things a bit now, though. And
Change.
yeah, and I want to talk a little bit about a book that's being released very shortly. Specifically your one. You decided to write a kids book. And I think we might have mentioned this in a previous show, but we haven't gone into too much detail. But it's ready now. It's being published. It's being printed as we speak.
The book is at the press, and believe me, it is groaning under the weight of that press. So yeah, it's about to be released upon the unsuspecting populace, Pete.
Mate, so I've had the privilege of reading it or having it read to me.
Did you read it?
Well,
And you're alive to tell the tale. But your hair has gone grey.
Your
hair has gone
It's
grey.
a great story. It's a really, really good story, and one that I think kids can really identify with. And I love the fact, and I know I'm biased because I'm Pondian, but I love the fact that it's set in Pondos, and I love the symbolism.
I thought it was set in IKEA. Are you sure we're reading the right book?
The one that I read.
Okay.
Was it. And I think that getting our mutual friend Steph to illustrate it was fantastic because he's a very talented bloke, and it really brings the words out from the page. Have you? I suppose has anyone else? Have any young people read it thus far?
Okay. By way of background context, the book is called Soumela και ο μαγικός Κεμεντζές. Soumela and the magic Kemenje. Kemenje is the Pondiaki lira. Yeah, it's actually a Persian word.
Yes.
Yeah, which means little bow.
Oh, not small violin. It means little bow.
Little bow.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So, and it's a purely Greek instrument. Just has a Persian name.
Yeah.
Don't know how that happens. Yeah. And it's called Kemenje all the way up to the borders of China.
Really?
Because this, in various permutations and different forms, this instrument can be found all the way up to the Turkish populations in China, the Uyghurs. Yeah.
Why, Dean? Why did you set this children's story in
Okay, I'll
Pontus?
tell you why. Because I always had this idea floating in my head of writing a children's book about a magic Kemenje. and it would flit into my mind, flit out, I'd get involved in other things like how to get my money back from Ashley Madison, and
Yeah. Okay.
sorry, my friend's money back from Ashley Madison, and my daughter during last year's lockdown, because
Yeah.
it was about this time, she says to me, "Baba, γράφεις, όλο γράφεις," which is true. Και δεν γράφεις τίποτα για τα παιδιά. You never write anything for kids.
She leveled that criticism at you. How old's your daughter?
Well, she was 7 at the time.
Wow.
And I said, go and get a piece of pen and a paper,
Yeah.
and we'll start writing.
And
So
you just
we did.
started.
And it just
You wrote this with your daughter.
yeah, I wrote with my daughter. So
Well, I didn't know that, Dean.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't- I didn't know that
we
you
were-
wrote it with her.
yeah, she was sitting next to me. I was talking to her about what we were writing. She was discussing it, and then I was writing the whole thing down. So I wrote this book called Sumela and the Magic Yemenje. And the whole idea is this, Pete. The Pondian genocide is a horrific event, but it's an important event. It's part of our history.
Yeah, it is.
How do you talk to kids about it
Yeah.
in a way where you don't traumatize them?
Yeah.
And how do you insulate them from the pain?
Yeah.
So I thought, I'm going to write Paramithi. I'm going to write a fairy story.
Yeah.
Fairy stories have two elements. No one really gets hurt,
Yeah.
and they live happily ever after.
Yeah.
So the whole idea is, where is there a world where kids can retreat into in times of trouble, so that they can feel, because part of childhood is feeling secure,
Yeah.
feeling cocooned with love, feeling that there is a structure around you to protect you. So how can you have that and then emerge from whatever troubles on the other side relatively unscathed? So that's what that book is about. Sumela is a girl who is experiencing the genocide, but at the same time, through means magical and supernatural, is being protected
Yeah.
from the effects of that genocide. Yeah. So that's what the book is about. That's what I decided that I wanted to write about.
It's amazing how you convey the feeling of the horror of genocide without going into any detail as to the
Well, you can't. I mean, I've got kids,
Yeah.
and I would never, especially having young kids, sit there and graphically explain to them what happened. They're not ready.
no.
But they are old enough to understand that there were once Greeks in Pondos, and now there are no Greeks in Pondos, and there's a reason why. So through the medium of fairy story, you can get the guts of the thing out there,
Yeah.
having regard for their feelings and not traumatizing them.
And
Because the point is this, Pete. In this country, we've been here for over 100 years now.
Yeah.
In Melbourne, and in Sydney and wherever, okay? We've been here generally in significant numbers for 100
Insignificant
years.
numbers, you're right, yeah.
We don't write children's stories.
We don't?
And
I've never noticed.
I've noticed lately that some people are trying to write some books.
Yeah.
I've got opinions about those books.
Okay.
Some books I think hit the mark, others I don't think do. But in all stages, what the authors of these books are trying to do, and they're generally mums, mumpreneurs, sitting at home saying, how can this work? They want to convey certain aspects to the kids.
Yeah.
Whether it's culture, whether it's tradition, whether it's a particular view of the Greek identity. And I think that's is significant, that an emerging spontaneous movement is happening whereby people want to write books addressed to their kids.
Okay.
And a lot of those books are bilingual.
Right.
My story was originally written in Greek and then I translated into English.
Right.
And then what happened was, thinking about it, our Archbishop, who's very interested in the welfare of children and the way children are being brought up here, said to me that his imprint, because the Theological College in Sydney has its own imprint and its own press, they want to produce books for kids.
Yeah.
And obviously they want to produce books for kids that maintain aspects of Greek culture,
Yeah.
faith, history, all these things. And he thought this might be a good book to publish, and that's how it happened.
No, it's great, but I think you hit the nail on the head. What is I think the main reason why we want to impart these type of stories to our kids is that we want to teach them a lesson, and a lesson, I think, in stories like this is about being hopeful, that through trying times, as hard as
You can't be negative. B, we really don't pass on our stories to our kids. And if you look even in Greece, when you try and find stories for kids, what they've done is they've translated Hans Christian Andersen.
yeah,
They've translated the Brothers Grimm.
right,
But the old Greek fairy tales, the ones that the Yayadas used to tell
yeah,
our parents and our grandparents, they're getting lost. So what are our own things
Yeah.
that we can pass on to kids in a fairy story format in order for them to become part of their heritage and culture? Because remember, our way of life within 2 generations has changed so much. If you look at our grandparents or parents, the Khorio, the way they lived, the way they live now, and the way we live now, and the emerging mores and customs, they're changing rapidly.
They
So
are.
how do we preserve memory of that? Because it's part of our identity. And part of our identity is also the trials and tribulations. So how can we provide digests of Greek history of whatever age? I mean, I've been always interested in Pondos from a young age, but it could be anything, you know? How can we do that and convey that to the kids in a digestible format, in a comfortable and safe format, which doesn't require too much from them emotionally, but which they'll enjoy? That's what I'm trying to do. So it's a kind of experiment.
Well, I think you've achieved something big there. I'm glad that the church has come to support and publish the book. I certainly will be speaking to the people that I know in order to be able to get it, and not just because we're mates, but because I think the story really, really hits.
Sorry, that's a bit presumptuous. What are we?
You're right. Well, not even that, are we?
No. I find my mates on. Well, I used to find my mates on Ashley Madison.
Listen. When's the book going to be available for
By
purchase?
the time this airs,
Yeah,
or posts, or I don't know how it works these days because I don't understand technology.
I just upload
It
it.
will be out, and you should be able to find it if you go to St Andrew's Theological College bookstore, which is where it's going to be sold there, or you can email us, or you can ask us, and it will be around.
I'll put in. Listen, we'll put in the link of the description of this video and what have you. But
do that,
I
do
think
that.
it's one of those things that we should support, and we should, as you said, encourage others to write their own stories
And
as
put
well.
it this way, it's a community endeavour.
Yeah.
You mentioned Steph. Stefanos Eleftheriadis is an amazing author, illustrator in his own right.
Yeah.
A very talented guy.
Absolutely.
For me, he personifies what Pondos is about in Australia. I remember seeing him at the 25th of March Barelasi with his kid, then tiny little boy dressed up as a little Pondian.
Yeah.
And Steph's got that characteristic Pondian features. And for me, he is Pondos. and to be able to work with him on this project is a really moving experience,
I know.
Pete. It comes from the heart.
It does.
He
With
really
him,
feels
yeah.
deeply about that, about his place of origin.
Yeah.
And to see him engage with the text, bring it to life
Yeah.
in a way which for me was unexpected, it is a privilege.
You know, honestly, it was a marriage made in heaven, and look at the bright side. You got to know him without even having to meet him through Ashley Madison, did you?
Marriage made in Pondos. Trumps Ashley Madison every time.
You met Steph through clubs, right?
Through the organised Greek community,
Through
as I
the
call
organised
it,
Greek
as opposed to
community.
the disorganised Greek community.
And that is a great segue into the next topic.
Okay, what's the next topic?
The next topic is this. Again, this came from a conversation we we're having yesterday.
I should stop talking to you.
But I think it's very important for us to continually talk about this.
Okay.
And to talk about the evolving aspects of this, because our Greek community is what it is, has been predominantly represented over the years by clubs
Okay.
of its various forms, whether it be your local Greek club, regional Greek club, generic Greek club, generic national Greek club being a federation, world bodies, even government sponsored bodies like SAER and what have you. And you made a comment yesterday, and you talked about if these clubs, in whatever format, generically, in whatever format they may be, whether they truly represent our community or not.
Indeed.
And your opinion is that probably not as much, or not anymore?
No, they're redundant.
All of them?
Yes.
Wow. You're president of one of those
No,
clubs,
I'm
aren't
not.
you? No, you're
I'm
not.
a secretary of one.
Sorry.
I'm a
Yes.
secretary
But you
of a
are
federation.
secretary of one, right?
I'm trying to set up a Pan-Galactic Confederation.
Haven't you already done that?
The Pan-Galactic Confederation
Yep.
is because you talk about, Pan-Australian federations
Yes.
and people, get off on that. And then there's the world body and people talk about that. No one
Yeah.
knows what we're talking about because they're irrelevant, these things. So I'm thinking, why can't we take it out of the world, out of this world experience and make it Pan-Galactic?
Yeah.
Now, let's look at the history. We're a tribal people.
We are.
And we are comprised of a number of tribes. all of whom agree readily that Kolokotroni, Socrates, and Mikis Theodorakis are our common ancestors.
Mm-hmm.
But apart from that, each person's affiliation is to their own region, their own village. Okay? So, people come to Australia and they settle in Melbourne, they settle in various suburbs, but they don't relate to each other after a while, after they arrive in significant numbers as people who are fellow Greeks. They relate to each other from according to their place of origin. And you have in the early days of the Greek community here great arguments and friction between the people from Ithaca, Ithaki, and the Samians, who were early here. The Ithacans were here first, and they were restaurateurs, and they had a lot of money, and they considered the Samians to be yokels and oiks. And they did not want them running the Greek community. We're talking about the Greek community of Melbourne, which is our oldest institution.
One that was established in 1896?
That's the one, okay? And if you look at the history, there are arguments and fights and friction between the groups, yeah? So as this thing develops, all these regional associations get created. Now, I've always belonged to the Samian Brotherhood Pythagoras. That's very old. That's 80 years old.
Right.
So we're talking about way back then.
Yeah.
And there are others. Now, a more organic and sensible version of this thing would have been to organise according to area. All the Greeks of Brunswick, all the Greeks of Flemington, all the Greeks of Essendon, all the Greeks of Thomastown. Because you have more in common with the people around in the area in which you live than with, for example, someone who comes from the same village as your dad but lives on the other side of town.
Don't we have that? Don't we have that here?
No, really. So the whole idea is, while it was still fresh in people's minds, they came from the villages, they felt more comfortable hanging around each other because they didn't, even back home, they never came across any other Greeks.
Right.
They were village-based. That makes sense. It gave people a sense of security. It gave them a social base. It gave them a security network. No, I'm going to go and find, I need help. I've got a ready support network of people who will help me. And they'll help me not because I'm Greek, but because they know me, because we've got family ties, because we've got regional ties.
Yeah.
And I remember growing up, I mean, that existed in my age. I hardly knew anyone who was Greek outside my parents' villages because they were the people we mixed with.
Yeah.
That was our world. Everyone else was Xenos.
Right.
And a lot of people I speak to of my age have that experience. So that's fine. But when that generation starts going, and when you're born here, and when your experiences both of Australian society and of the Greek community are not village-based, what happens next? And the fact of the matter is that we've all been here a long time. A lot of these clubs are dying. Most of these clubs exist in name only. Most of these clubs, even when they don't exist in name only, are valiantly trying to do 2 or 3 or 4 events a year to justify their existence. And they've been relegated now to just having dinner dances, an odd barbecue, and maybe an ekdromi out into the country somewhere, coronavirus permitting. That is the breadth of their experience. Now, Greece, a.k.a. the motherland, sees the disparate people living in this country and recently says, well, they created SAE.
Yes.
In order to get into SAE, you had to be a federation.
Yes.
If you were a club like the Samiotes, you couldn't get in.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter that that club's been in existence back when SAE was created, for 60 years or 70 years.
Yeah.
If you were not a federation, you couldn't get in. So there was, back in the day, in the late 90s, a mad scramble to create federations of clubs in order to get your free ticket to go to SAE, which was the Council of Greeks Abroad. That's why we have so many federations in existence today, most of which are defunct. Some are not, most are. They were created specifically to get people to go to SAE as delegates, because the Greek government determined that if you were not a federation, we don't recognise you, you have no seat at the table. So that was the Greek government's way of defining how they were going to recognise the representation of the Greek people. Now, when you're doing that and you're forming artificial federations in order to get a seat at the table, what are you actually representing? You're representing the desire to be at the table. But can you really say, for example, that the Pan-Ionian Islands Federation has got any interests which are different to the Pan-Thracian Federation? How are their interests different? In Melbourne, they live in the same areas. They have the same problems. They have the same experiences. For me, it's an artificial and inept distinction. It made sense because people felt very strongly at that time about those regional affiliations. Now, not so much. So the point that I'm making is this. Recently, there's been another attempt to have a conference in Athens. I think that's going to be in August, of regional organisations.
Yeah.
It's the Worldwide Regional Organisation Conference.
Yeah.
And all regional organisations invited to join, and I'm sure some will. I'm the secretary of the Pan-Epirotic Federation, and that is part of the world body of Epirotes abroad, which is Germany and various other, Egypt, there's a few of us there, and America and what have you. And we've been invited to join. And I've got problems with joining this thing.
Right.
Because I look at all these efforts by the Greek government to engage us, and I'm thinking this. People our age, and even people in their 50s, and most people in their 60s now, no longer are involved in clubs.
You're right.
They're not.
Yeah.
The major exceptions are the Pondians. There's reasons for that I'll get into in a bit, and the Cretans.
Okay.
But everybody else, the clubs are dying. The clubs are considered relics of the past. They're part of our history. We love them, but they're no longer relevant. We don't want to let them go, but they will go because they're no longer relevant. They don't represent us. We live in this country. We've spread our wings. We are involved in innumerable amounts of things. Our interests are amazing. Our skill bases are wide. Diverse opinions, diverse ideas, diverse activities. None of that is captured by these clubs. All those things of who we are now exist outside those clubs. And yet the Greek government is going to look at those clubs and use that as an easy way to make generalisations and empty and bland statements about who we are and what our needs are. And I don't think, I mean, there are great people involved in the clubs who feel very passionate about their clubs.
Absolutely.
There are.
Yeah.
I don't disparage that for a minute, and I say this as a person that spent most of my adult life and all of my youth involved in clubs. But I've come to the opinion that these things are not representative of the whole, which exists outside that, and therefore the Greek government should not rely on these clubs as a way of generalising and making plans about the diaspora. Actually, the Greek government should make plans about the diaspora as well. What the Greek government should be doing is asking us, who are the diaspora, what we want.
Isn't that what they're trying to do with this thing, this meeting?
Well, who are they asking? They're asking representatives of generally dying clubs.
And who would you recommend? I mean, I can vouch for this. I know that one of those particular world bodies that have been asked is 99.99% taken up by Greeks from Greece. There's actually not one other federation outside of Greece as part of this particular the Pontian world body that's going to be attending.
Well, I don't know about Pontians, and I make no comment about
but
those.
That's fine. But what I'm saying
is the only thing I can comment on is my own people.
Yeah, that's fine.
And I've got a similar thing happening.
And I can comment on mine.
Yeah, feel free.
But I suppose what you're saying that even if this particular world body had every single other federation around the world in it, even then, those federations and their respective clubs are not indicative of representing the Greek community
as a whole. No, I don't think they are.
So the question,
I think that the only, if you are going to get a blanket organisation, the only one that represents us as a totality as Melbourne Greeks is the Greek community of Melbourne, Victoria.
Right.
Because that has no regional affiliation. And my point is this, seeking consensus based on regional affiliations makes no sense anymore. We are a community of over 100 years settlement in this country.
Right.
There is no difference in the experience, as I said, between a Samian living in Melbourne to a Messenian living in Melbourne.
Yeah.
What are you actually trying to achieve by bringing people from regional organisations? The experience is the same. They're still going to have the same issues with pensions, the same issues with tax, the same issues with education, the same issues with language. What is the difference? Nothing. There is no difference.
Has your recent trip to Brisbane solidified that opinion?
No. I think that the point is this. Brisbane's a completely different kettle of fish. We live in Melbourne.
Yeah.
In Melbourne, all these clubs exist side by side. But they're really not representative of our needs as Melburnian Greeks. They're relics of the past. They are on their way out, most of them. Notable exceptions, as I said, are the Pondians and the Cretans. Why? It's the music which engages younger people.
Yeah.
The music is lively. The music is vibrant. It's an easy way of attracting people. It doesn't demand too much
Yeah.
of people.
Mm.
You listen to the music, you get up and dance.
Yeah,
You don't have to learn the language.
Yeah.
You don't have to sit there and study abstruse history texts in order to develop a sense of identity.
Yeah.
You have that music, you're in. And it's
Yeah.
happy music, it's jumpy music, it's for everyone to enjoy. And that's
Yeah.
why these groups are growing rather than diminishing.
Right.
Everywhere else, though, that's not the case. Everywhere else, the young people have deserted these in droves. And not only the younger people, as I said, people in their 50s and 60s. No? People go to the events of these clubs out of a sense of duty more than anything, because they don't want to see this thing go,
Yeah.
because there's a sense of urgency. It's dying. We've got to prolong its life as long as possible. They're on life support. Greek government is asking clubs that don't represent the needs of Greek Australians to comment on those needs. It makes no sense, in my opinion.
Right. And the alternative is to go to the... So if you were now,
Yeah.
if you were now the Minister for Greeks Abroad in Greece and you had to look at Australia...
Well,
okay?
no, I can't be the Minister of Greeks Abroad, because the Greek government takes us so seriously as Greeks Abroad that they don't have a Ministry of Greeks Abroad. They abolished it. They have a General Secretariat of Greeks Abroad and Public Diplomacy. Sometimes they get rid of the L and becomes pubic diplomacy. And that exactly describes the manner of diplomacy which is being conducted in modern Greece at any given time anyway, les enfants.
So okay, you're the General Secretary?
Okay, that makes me feel good.
Yeah. So what would you? So and let's look at Australia.
Yeah, I'm looking at Australia.
So you want to get an opinion, an idea of what it is that Greeks from Australia basically need. And as you said, we are a diverse people. There are Greeks that have been here for only 5 or 10 years.
Yep.
There are Greeks like us who've been born and raised here. We're not we're not Greek citizens, Australian citizens, but of Greek heritage, but heavily involved. And you've got 99.9% of people with Greek heritage not involved in any club whatsoever, whether it be the Greek community of Melbourne and Victoria, whether it be actually these regional
any
stuff,
club,
any
any
club,
club,
right? So,
Not even the Greek Fishing Club or the Greek Hunters Club or the soccer clubs.
yeah, you're right. So, what do? How do you ascertain? How do you get a good cross section of an opinion from those people? How do you reach out to them?
This is what I will do. Instead of wasting money on conferences,
Yeah,
which we can't attend because we're locked here,
yeah,
and we can't penetrate
Yeah,
the iron ring of our borders,
yeah.
I would call for submissions.
Okay.
And I would say we want to get a sense of what the needs of the Apodimi are, and I keep it broad-based. And, I would involve the clubs in that, because obviously these people take value in what they're doing, which is why they're there, and they are part of the cross-section. What I'm saying is they're not the only part. As you say, 99% exist outside that.
Yeah.
I would call for submissions from all parties. Then I'll collate that information. Yeah. And then maybe having collated that information and been able to analyse that information, ascertain the commonalities and the differences, maybe then I'd call for a conference. But not before. You do your homework first.
And you would actually use...
And what you would have to do, sorry that I'm interrupting,
Yeah.
although I do it all the time, is
Go on, it's all right. It's all good.
you would first of all, I mean, imagine the diversity of experiences and opinions in Melbourne alone, let alone any of the other states. You need to analyse whether there are differences between the states. Okay, where, if the Greek government is to intervene, is it worth intervening?
Yeah.
Because obviously you could say that there are some remote communities that it's not worth worrying about. Others you might say, no, look, given a little bit of push, they may become vibrant and come into their own. And then how does that collective experience compare with the needs of the Americans or the Kazakhstanis or the Africans?
And you talk about needs.
Yeah, needs, wants, getting an idea, because this is the point. What are they actually trying to do?
That was my next question.
Yeah.
Like, what is the actual goal?
The actual goal, in my opinion, is to be able to issue a communique to say, look, we did this conference,
Yes.
we did this Yotsapodimos, it's done now. What do you want? We gave you a conference.
Man, we are so cynical. Is it because that we have been involved for so long?
I'm sorry. Who are you calling cynical? Look, Diogenes the cynic was a Pondian.
He was.
You know? He was the dude that used to walk around in the nude and flash his willy at people in order to shock them. Now, if you want to be such a person That's okay. Apparently on Ashley Madison there are terms and conditions you're not allowed to do that,
No.
as a friend told me. But it's not cynical, it's a fact. It's a fact. I went to Sayre, I think on 4 separate occasions.
Yeah.
Okay? And the first time I went, it was this idea, I'm going to go there,
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about how we are, and I'm going to meet other people, and we're going to share information.
Pretty idealistic.
And discuss our problems.
Yeah.
And we did none of that.
No.
They sat us in a room and said, okay, work out a constitution. So we fought and fought and fought for the 2 or 3 days of the conference. I can't remember, it's a blur. With the American Greeks, with the Canadian Greeks, with the European Greeks.
Yeah.
And we came up with a constitution, which was how we were going to run. Not discussing the issues,
No.
just coming up with a constitution. Yeah.
Yeah.
We did that.
I know that.
We left.
Yep.
We came back 2 years later and they said, come up with a constitution.
Wow.
And we said, but we did that last time. They said, no, that's out the door now. You got to do it again. That was 2 years ago. So we did the same process again. Yeah. Didn't discuss any ideas, didn't share any experiences. We did that behind the scenes.
Yeah.
But that was what our masters who invited us asked us to do. And the minute we expressed ideas or opinions that they did not like, they shut us down very, very quickly. Very, very quickly.
Wow.
So my point is this: why do we need them to tell us what? Why do they need to know what we want through conferences? They should come here and live among us and experience what we experience and research and engage with us, yeah? And not rely on a couple of representatives from here and there who know someone in the ministry who gets in.
Yeah.
Send a couple of people here to live among us. And you know what?
Yeah.
A lot of the people that have been sent here for education purposes or for other purposes have been lovely, amazing people.
Yeah.
One of them is Mr. Manos Tsimbaragos, who was here for 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
Really revolutionized the Saturday Greek schools of the Greek community. Did amazing work. He should have been able to stay here. The need for him is great. They're sending him back.
Right.
He will have gone by the time this goes to air.
Wow. What a shame.
Against the protests, the pleadings of the entire Greek community, keep this man here, we need him, you don't really need him right now. And against his own wishes, they're sending him back. That's the level of investment and understanding that the Greek government has in us. But it is our fault. And why is it our fault, you may ask? You're not asking, so I'm going to tell you. It's our fault because we pander to them, because we're flattered every time they communicate with us, because we seek the opportunity to validate our own view of Hellenism by taking photos with them and by connecting with them and being in good with them. Yeah. Whereas we should be able to say, listen, not interested, go away when we're not happy.
But isn't that what?
We don't do that.
Isn't that what? Isn't that what you do though?
What do I do? Who am I?
I know that's.
I mean, I'm not a representative of the Greek community at
Well-
large. I am a member of the whole, and I have an attitude towards the Greek government, which is this: I love Greece.
Yeah.
I know it's not easy to run that country.
Yeah.
I know that Greece has got problems, and Greece shouldn't have to deal with us. But if you are going to deal with us, who are not Greek citizens and
Yeah.
live somewhere else,
Yeah.
you got to deal with us on an equal basis.
Yeah. That's my theory exactly.
Because we don't live there.
They don't like that though, Dean.
You have no power over us.
Yeah, they don't like that.
Yeah.
They don't like it at all.
And like it or not, and sometimes because we have also this idea that, you know what, we are Greeks, and somewhere in the back of our mind there's this thing, one day we may go back.
Yeah.
We'd like to have it, what we say in Greek, diporto.
Yeah, okay.
But we don't. We live here.
Yeah.
We enjoy the privileges of living here.
We do.
No, the social welfare privileges,
Yeah.
the order of being here, the vibrant culture of being here, and we do all that while dreaming of Mykonos.
Yeah.
But we don't go back and live there.
No.
What we want to do is to go back and forth whenever we like
Yeah.
and enjoy the privileges of both. Now,
Yeah.
whether that's possible, I don't know. I'll leave that to each person to decide. But we live here. So we are Australian Greeks. Yeah, as much as we are Greek Australians, we're also Australian Greeks. We've got we've created here a different form of Hellenism.
Yeah. True.
You respect it. You acknowledge it for what it is.
Yeah.
And if you want to deal with it, and you've got suggestions as to how you as a Greek government want to bring us closer, we're willing to hear. But don't play with us, because we're not that stupid, and because as the generations become more Australianised, that Australian cynicism that you referred to earlier is going to shun through. And we don't take crap from people.
No, we don't.
No?
Especially our generation, I think.
We don't. If it doesn't suit us,
Yeah.
we don't care. We're not going to be
Yeah.
the bootlickers because we don't need to be.
No, that's right.
You look at the European delegates of these conferences; they're always licking the boots of
Always.
politicians because they are going back and
Yeah.
forth. Yeah, they haven't been established in their own countries long enough, and there's always that idea: if I go back, I need to lick enough boots to get to where I want to go because
Yeah.
that's how the system works in Greece.
Yeah.
In Australia, we're not there yet.
No.
It may go down that path eventually, but it's not there yet.
I think the generation before us tend to take that, have been imbued with that level of bootlicking. I see that.
Yeah, but that bootlicking is because of
I see it too much from our generation.
No. The previous generation had that idea that their Hellenism is validated by the approval of the politicians.
Correct.
We don't need that
No.
anymore. We're quite happy being who we are.
Correct.
With our minimal language skills,
Yes.
with our minimal
Yeah.
contact, but with a very passionate understanding of us being
We don't
Greek.
need their validation.
We don't need their validation. We don't care.
No.
And you see that when all these politicians come and the younger generation not interested. Oh, yeah, who's that? That's whoever. Oh, yeah, good luck to him.
Well,
You know what I mean? There's none of that mad rush for the youngers to go and take photos with whoever comes. Not that anyone's coming these days. Coronavirus was invented to keep Greek politicians out of Australia.
well, we can't actually. Can't keep them away forever though. They'll be coming sooner or later. I've got one. Okay, I said before that we're going to circle back to a particular
Let's
issue.
circle back. What are we doing?
Okay, last item that I want to basically discuss is something that came out recently, and I've got to look up his name, man. I forgot his name. It's a
This dude.
Turkish academic
Turkish academic.
who's recently come out, and he's actually, it's funny. It was like Turkish.
Oh, I know the one. Anyway, I don't know what his name is.
the
and
geologist.
By the time you look it up, but this guy is the guy that said what?
He turned around
He
and
said that Greeks invented the souvlaki, Turks invented the kebab, and it is on this basis that we're going to solve the problem in Cyprus.
No, he turned around and he said how 93% of Turks in Turkey have got Greek heritage, and that they are Greek Muslims.
What does he base that on?
Based on the DNA results that are coming out, all the DNA research is coming out.
DNA.
DNA.
I love
yeah.
DNA.
And what I wanted to discuss with you today, because
DNA.
we're not
Diariboxynucleic acid.
yeah, that's right.
DNA.
So we're not genealogists or geneticists, right? So we have.
But we are geologists.
we're not geologists, but
Gynecologists.
I think it's very. I think it's a very good question. People have, ever since the advent of Ancestry.com and all these DNA tests that people are doing.
Ancestry.com I meant, not Ashley.com. Ancestry.com is the one I had problems with. I can't get on the bloody thing. I forgot my password. Continue.
People have been going crazy.
They have. I'm sick of it.
And trying to redefine what it means to be a Greek or what it
Well,
means
let me
to-
tell you this story, Pete.
Turk
Because
and so forth.
my wife, I have small eyes. Don't let the glasses fool you. If I take them off, which I won't do. I have very small eyes. And my wife always says, you must have had Mongolian or Chinese ancestors.
Wow. Okay.
And we're in Europe. And got to meet this Chinese guy 10 years ago. And he said to me, are you Chinese? And my wife said, see, if they recognize you as your own, you are one of them. You must have had Chinese ancestors. There was once when I was waiting to get a taxi in Greece, and I got into a taxi and I said to the guy, θέλω να πάω εδώ, θέλω να πάω εκεί, ξέρω εγώ τι. Μιλάς ελληνικά, λέω γιατί. Σε πέρασα για Κινέζο.
Oh my God.
So this has been dogging me my whole life. Yeah. And okay, so Ancestry.com came out and all these things, and my wife signed up for a kit.
Right.
And she found out that her mum is 17% Greek, my wife's Assyrian, and then she rationalised that, said, well, Alexander the Great and the troops went up
Okay.
there to Arbil, where my Bethera comes from, and so that would explain that aspect.
Yeah.
And she said, let's see what you're going to do. And I resisted. I
Right.
resisted, Pete.
You haven't done it.
No, I did it.
Oh,
but
you
the
did
whole
do
idea
it.
is I resisted for a long time because my opinion is this. Your identity has nothing to do with your DNA.
Yes. I agree with you, man.
The culture that you live
Yeah.
determines who you
That's
are.
right.
I remember as a young kid listening to my schoolmates saying, oh, I'm a quarter Scottish, a third Cornish,
Yeah.
whatever, I don't know, French, Breton, Norman.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, but you're an Aussie as far as I know. And unless you're living those aspects, unless those aspects of your ancestral cultures mean something
Yeah.
to you, you're not that.
Correct.
You know, most of these people who say, oh, I'm very proud Irish, if they go to Ireland, the Irish people laugh at them.
Yeah.
No, they're not that. And a lot of Greeks who are proud Greeks here in Melbourne will go to Greece, and the Greeks, they'll call them Australian,
Yeah.
will fail to see the connection. You know, it's all an imagined thing. How you feel, what you feel, and how you manifest that is a deeply personal thing.
Correct.
Okay, obviously you need to be recognised by other members of the group broadly as being part of that group. If you can assert that, if I go out tomorrow and say I feel like a Romanian
Yeah.
because I just do, and the Romanians will say, well, no, you're not, love.
Yeah.
You've got no connection with the place or whatever. So there needs to be some type of broad understanding.
Yeah.
But I mean, you go back to the ancient Greeks. And the ancient Greeks said this: Έλληνας είναι όποιος μιλάει ελληνικά και μετέχει στην ελληνική παιδεία. Hellenism was an attitude, you know, and it was broad-based, and it could accept anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is why you had people like Lucian that you referred to earlier, the Assyrian writer, writing brilliant ancient Greek comedies. He was not considered non-Greek. You speak Greek, you feel Greek, you're Greek. We don't care about your race, and that is why the Greek culture was able to spread and become so vibrant. It's only when you close that off and you make it about race and heritage that things begin to stagnate, because you're not absorbing new ideas, you're not bringing new people in. The brilliance of the Anglo-Saxon paradigm, which is what we live now, is that you can be from Greece, you can be from wherever. We are one, we are many, and from all the lands of earth we come, but we're Australians.
It's more of an American thing, though.
No, it's also here.
No, yes, it is now.
Yeah.
But I think that philosophy about all-encompassing, you know, being accepting of people, that's more of an American Anglo-Saxon
But it works.
thing. It does.
It
works.
does. And that's what happened in Greece during ancient Greece and Byzantium.
Yeah.
In Byzantium, their national consciousness was Roman. We are the continuation of the Roman Empire. But they were Greek in language. So as long as you spoke Greek and you could participate in the public life, you were part of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, doesn't matter where you came from. A lot of the emperors were Armenian.
Yeah.
Other ones were of other ancestry.
That's right.
It didn't matter.
Yeah.
You spoke the language. You could talk the talk. You were part of the culture, regardless of where you came from. So identity is a fluid thing. Today we're Greeks. Tomorrow we're something else.
Yeah.
We saw with our Slavic friends how quickly they can jump cultures and espouse new cultures. And not only them. Those are closer to my own reality.
Yeah.
The Assyrians.
Yeah.
No? The Assyrians, they all speak different languages. They're all one people.
Right.
The ones that became Catholic in the 19th century through Catholic missionaries, Catholic Church created a new identity for them. They called Chaldeans.
Oh, is that where that comes from?
Okay, and they took that word from the south of Iraq. Now, there are no Christians living in the south of Iraq. The people that came to call themselves Chaldeans lived in North Iraq with the Assyrians. They were Assyrians, but they've been given a national identity. And they swear black and blue that they're Chaldeans, and they've got nothing to do with the Assyrians. Same people, speaking the same language, but have converted to a different religion. That's how easy it is.
Wow.
That's how easy it is to create an identity.
Social engineering.
Social engineering, yeah. You look at what's going on, the debacle in Ukraine. The Greek Catholics, which is what they were called, the ones who were of the Greek church who were converted also by the Catholics, given this Ukrainian identity.
Yeah.
The other ones think they're Russians. They're the same people.
Yeah, true.
Do you know what I mean? It is very easy. What is an identity is a language with an army, they say.
Yeah,
So this guy says that he's by DNA. Well, anyway, cut a long story short, I did my DNA test.
Yes.
The DNA test said that I am, I think, 86% Balkan Greece.
Right.
And the rest Asia Minor.
Okay.
And my wife said, God, you're boring. Your people have never gone anywhere. Hers is peripatetic, there's this, there's that, the other.
Yeah.
I am a native of the land from which I come. Yeah. That is what I am. This is how boring. So I am not a descendant of Genghis Khan and the marauding hordes of Mongols. To my inevitable chagrin, unfortunately, I am a Greek.
Okay.
Now, had that come out that I was 50% Chinese or whatever, that would have made no difference to me.
True.
Because I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
I live my Greek culture.
Yeah.
That is what I am. Yeah. My next door neighbour who's Greek and can't speak a word of Greek and has no contact with Greeks feels very uncomfortable around Greeks, including me, when I get up in the morning and say, Yasure Georgi Tikanis, because he hates that, because he doesn't understand that he can't participate in it. Do you call him Greek? It's a hard one. Or do you respect whatever he thinks he is?
Well, I think that what you said beforehand about being accepted by the wider community as being that,
If you want to be.
yeah, if you want to be, but that does play a role.
But
It's one of the anchors, one of the different anchors.
DNA is insidious because among the nationalists, DNA is used to show purity.
Correct. And that was his argument. If you read on what this academic was saying, he's talking about how invalid talking about purity is, and how much it pretty much doesn't make any sense.
And there is no such thing as a national Greek DNA.
No.
DNA are shared genes between people living in geographical areas.
Correct. That's what it is.
Now, what we know about human history is people migrate. People go everywhere. Yeah, people share DNA.
Correct.
There are not much differences between DNAs of people living in close proximity to each other, and if there are reasons for that. It makes no difference at all. Now, I take that idea that 93% of people living in Turkey have Greek DNA with a grain of salt, because what about the masses of Armenians that live there?
Yeah.
No, what's their DNA?
Probably the same.
Don't know. And at the end of the day, what about all the proto people that lived in Greece before the Greeks got there?
Well,
The Pelasgians, the Minoans,
Yeah.
who may or may not have been Greek, we still don't know. We haven't deciphered the Linear A. How's that relevant? Now, these people have been brought up thinking that they're Turkish. They are Turkish.
Yeah.
Now, if they want to question the foundations of their identity and say, look, this modern Turkish identity is based on assimilation, conquest, everything else. Yeah, that's a cultural argument. It's not a DNA argument.
No.
And they do need to re-examine that, and they are re-examining that, and they are questioning the fundamentals of their culture. Doesn't mean that they're going to become Greeks.
No.
They're not going to turn around like a lot of people say, okay, that's fine, we are now Greeks. Because they've missed out.
Yeah.
Another group that do that are the Antiochians. There's this group of people, Antioch in Syria.
Yeah.
There's these people that are emerging. They're mostly an internet presence, but they've actually created a party, I think, in Lebanon, where they say,
All right.
we are the descendants of the Greeks who settled in Syria. So we are Rum, we are Greeks. And I said to them, that's great, guys. You speak Arabic. You don't know anything about Greece. Maybe you shouldn't call yourself Greeks. You should call yourselves descendants of Greeks. Because what is your identity?
Yeah.
And they say, well, how can you tell us what our identity is? If we feel that we are Greeks, we are Greeks. Why do you impose a version of what it is to be Greek on us?
Yeah.
And I think that's a valid point.
Yeah. Very
I
good
will
point.
sit aside and watch you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And if that's what you want to do, if you think that you can plausibly assert an Arabic-speaking and English-speaking Greek Syrian culture, be my guest. Because at the end of the day, when Joe Blow is marching down the shrine, Cospende Martiu, in his shorts, wearing a fesi and holding a thing saying, good on you, Aussie, I'm Greek, in Cospende Martiu, who am I to tell him he's not?
Well,
I won't.
you won't. Unfortunately, it is an issue that we have within our community.
Well, I think we've got, considering where we are and our rapid language loss and all the other issues that are affecting us as an organised community, I don't think we have the luxury
No, we don't.
of dictating to
You're
people
right.
how they
We
feel.
don't.
All we can do is agree that there are certain things that we need to preserve and do our utmost
Yes.
to have them
That's
available
right.
to people
Yeah.
who want to avail themselves
And
of them.
find ways of actually make it appealing, find ways of making our culture far more accessible to the next generation so they can actually take that identity and make it for themselves what it should
you
be.
can't pick and choose, because we're all big about purity and DNA, but Nick Kyrgios, whose mother is not Greek, when he plays tennis, he's Greek.
Like Atenakumbo.
Tsitsipas.
Atenakumbo.
Tsitsipas.
Atenakumbo.
Atenakumbo's got a 100% Greek DNA.
Come on, he is like the epitome of what it is to be Greek.
Absolutely. He's tall, he's successful, like all Greeks are.
Absolutely.
Tsitsipas, his mother's Russian. Yeah? The Greek. Well, he lives in Greece. Of course he's a Greek. But we do this here too in Australia, when the athletes are successful, they're
Yes.
Aussies.
Yeah.
When they're annoying, they become Greek.
That's correct.
You remember when Nick Kyrgios was playing up and Dawn Fraser said that those immortal words, go back to where you came from.
Yes.
Yeah? So
Yeah.
you scratch the surface and
Yeah.
you find
Yeah.
Australia.
Oh, you'll find it. You'll find it.
Okay, that's just part of what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like Atenakumbo, he was like Greek. He sings Greeks go and support him. National anthem. He says he's proud to be Greek. and
Because
what have
he's
you.
successful.
Because he's successful. But
So maybe the key to a plausible Greek identity is to always have successes.
well, that was an ancient Greek thing too.
So let's do that.
It's-
Let's only allow successful people to be Greeks. Anyone who is non-successful, whether you fail an exam, whether you fail your performance review, Whether you fail your driving test,
You are no longer
you're
a
out.
Greek.
You are no longer.
I don't care if you speak
We
the
don't wanna know
language.
you, Mesophone.
Go-
Also.
yeah, get lost. And with that, we come to the end of our show.
Okay. Let us come to the end of the show.
Yes.
It is thus.
All right. So what were you doing after this, Ashley Madison?
No, it was Ancestry.com. I got confused. I lost my train of thought. You can with you.
Thoughts with our brothers and sisters in the other states. One of the few times we've been able to do
By
this
the
show.
time you see these people in other states who are not Victoria, you will be out of lockdown. And
Yeah, we'll be back in.
lockdown again. So enjoy your freedom. You had a lot of it. We didn't. And see you on the other side.
That's right. Yeah. Cheerio. Bye-bye.